And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Well, you know what's not ordinary? The way the Eagles get to 9-1. They don't do it pretty sometimes. They don't do it ordinary. They find a different way almost every single time. They scratch and claw. Andrew DiCecco, InsideTheBirds.com. The Eagles get revenge on the Chiefs, and it was similar. You know, a drop pass was the theme of the night, but a big drop pass. I had flashbacks of Quez Watkins dropping that pass for MVS last night, but it was a big play in the game, and it was a play that the Eagles were able to capitalize on to win that game. I wouldn't say it was the most aesthetically pleasing game, Andrew DiCecco, but somehow, some way, the Eagles get to 9-1.
Yeah, it was rather unconventional, but that's sort of the way the Eagles have found ways to win. Has been remarkable, and I think a true test of what they have there and what they're building. Whereas last season they were able to steamroll teams, they've had to win in a multitude of ways this season, which I think bodes well for them in the future when the games, as we advance into the season. But yeah, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, and the ball bounced their way multiple times yesterday. So it was an interesting game, and it oftentimes felt like the Chiefs were way ahead rather than just being a field goal apart at one point. But yeah, the Eagles found a way to pull it out.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Jalen Hurts, 14 of 22, 150 yards and an interception. I mean, you're not saying that's an MVP jump off the page kind of night, but what role did Jalen Hurts have in why they won that game last night?
Well, he was a steadying presence, right? He's somebody that never gets too high, too low. And yeah, I think he had 46 yards passing at the half. Wasn't really a factor running in the first half. So the offense really couldn't get moving outside of DeAndre Swift. But the thing about Jalen Hurts is he rises to the occasion. He elevates his performance when the chips are down and when you have to have it. You saw it in the Super Bowl. You saw it yesterday. When it mattered, he was dialing up Devontae Smith on a couple of back-to-back 13 and 41 yards. He ran it in. He scored twice in the second half, and he's just somebody that isn't fazed by the moment. His poise is remarkable, and he continues to climb in the record books, and he's just playing at a really high level, regardless of what the box score may indicate.
Andrew, leading 2 weeks leading into this game, we kept kind of asking, these teams just played in February. It was 38-35. How are they different? Well, after watching them play now against each other, how do you look at these two teams differently than the ones that played in the Super Bowl a couple months ago?
They are vastly different teams. And I really like what Kansas City has been able to do as far as building and stockpiling. Their secondary, they have a lot of young players that are interchangeable and some really good developmental pieces there. I think offensively is where I see the biggest change from the Chiefs, right? They're only averaging, I think it's like 23 points a game, whereas last season they were first, I believe, and they don't have a ton outside of Travis Kelce. Rashee Rice is a nice player, not a game breaker. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is a role player and a sporadic one at that. Sky Moore hasn't lived up to expectations. Justin Watson sort of came out of nowhere. He had a game high in targets 11 last night. So really you're seeing Patrick Mahomes trying to find ways to orchestrate the offense and manufacture points with a lackluster supporting cast aside from Travis Kelce. Also, Isaiah Pacheco, I should mention, had a really nice game. He runs really hard, and he and Travis Kelce pretty much make up the Chiefs' offense.
I felt like they got away from the run a little bit too much, don't you?
I do. It was really puzzling because he was really getting downhill and getting 7-8 yards a clip. And if you keep doing that, you keep forcing teams to come up and guys like Blankenship and Byer to come up and make these stops. It starts to wear down, and eventually you break a big one. He's not a home run hitting type of running back, but even Clyde Edwards-Helaire averaged 10 yards on his 2 carries. So, I mean, they had some success running the ball on an Eagles team that ranked first in the league going into it in run defense, averaging only limiting teams to only 66.3 yards per game.
Andrew DiCecco, Football 4, InsideTheBirds.com. I want to get thoughts from you on the Eagles' offensive game plan last night. I mean, they win the game, and then you look back and say, how? How are they able to win the game with the offensive game plan? Seeing a lot of people complaining, a lot of bubble screens. There were some drives after the fumble, back-to-back bubble screens. What did you think of Brian Johnson, the play caller, last night?
Well, I thought Brian Johnson's response to the Chiefs' initial strike was masterful. But and then after that, you started to see some regression and some of the puzzling play calling that marred the Eagles earlier in the season, right? And the bubble screen. You talk about the one to the left to Devontae where he almost got laid out. He's lucky he didn't take a bigger hit.
He almost got laid out, and then A.J. Brown did get laid out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I just thought that, the weather played a part in it. You're not really going to have this high-octane aerial attack like you did in the Super Bowl, but to have Devontae and A.J. have 39 yards on 3 catches at the break, I don't think anyone could have foreseen that. I thought that they could have done more to get the ball to their playmakers. Look, the weather sort of dictated what needed to happen, and I thought that it was going to be a big DeAndre Swift game going in. But I still think that you need to find a way to get the ball into someone like A.J. Brown's hands and players like that. Even throw the ball to the running backs and get some in the screen game and get that going. I just don't. Sometimes I think that Brian Johnson either tries to outsmart himself or get too cute or just sort of tries to overcomplicate things when you have a certain remedy to what the Chiefs were looking to do defensively.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people thought this was going to be a great marriage, and we're excited about Brian Johnson, the play caller, and why. I don't know if it's time to do what Pittsburgh did and make a change. He seemingly is still growing into this role. Are you? I don't know. Is disappointed the right word? Or did you think he would be better at the role as a play caller, especially his relationship with Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, I always thought that there was going to be a learning curve and some growing pains early, but you would figure by week 11, those would be ironed out and you'd see talent take over. You shouldn't struggle to manufacture points with the firepower that the Eagles have offensively, right? That's sort of troublesome. It shouldn't be this complicated to get the ball in the end zone. You shouldn't have these red zone inefficiencies. I don't want to say that it's seamless because execution and these things that takes a lot of time and diligence. But Brian Johnson, when you have it's not like you're working with the 2020 Philadelphia Eagles offense. You have bona fide playmakers there, and it seems like they keep selling themselves short and leaving points on the board, just week in and week out. And I just don't understand what direction, what their identity is. They're sort of just winning because they're just the more talented team.
All right, Andrew, a couple things now. Let's look at the defensive side of the ball and the game plan that Sean Desai put forth. Kevin Byard, he was the guy I gave my game ball to on Monday. I thought he was going to be the guy we'd be talking about today, and here we are. I thought Kevin Byard played a very good game. I thought they used him really well. But in general, the way the secondary played, let's start with them.
Yeah, Kevin Byard was one of the big, the most prominent stars of this game. I thought he made some really good plays in the run game and the pass game. The first touchdown, he was the culprit there, but after that, he rebounded. He had a game high or a team high 8 tackles, the interception there, which he baited Patrick Mahomes, which was a veteran move. And he was just all over the place, swarming to the football. That bye week was crucial in his acclimation process. And I tried to caution folks over the past couple of weeks to give him some time. Don't necessarily write somebody off and think that they don't have it anymore because they're not lighting the world on fire when they get to a new destination. They're trying to learn a new playbook, regardless of your status in the NFL. So I thought he did a nice job. Bradley Roby, his storyline could have been a lot different had Valdez-Scantling been able to reel in that last pass because he had several steps on Roby, but punching the ball out like Charles Tillman wearing that 33, thought he locked down that slot position a lot better than we've seen in recent weeks. A lot of that also is partly attributed to the lackluster personnel that the Chiefs had. He wasn't guarding a CeeDee Lamb or trying to cover up a Jahan Dotson or defend players of that capacity. But I thought that it was a good return for Roby, and he's active. And you saw Sidney Brown and Eli Ricks get in there a little bit as well. And I think that'll continue throughout the season. But Slay, actually, who has been the most consistent defensive back, aside from Reed Blankenship, in my opinion, had an up and down night. He had the defensive pass interference penalty, and there were a couple other plays that were uncharacteristic of him. I thought he was slow to react. James Bradbury had a really good night, aside from that play in which Justin Watson beat him off the line and down the field and just didn't track the football and couldn't find it. that could have altered the game as well. But largely, Mike, I think the Eagles secondary had a really good bounce back.
Yeah, the secondary did seemingly play well. I guess my follow-up question would that be, did they play well, or were the drops more of a factor? Were there plays to be made that Kansas City just simply did not make?
Yeah, there were plays to be made, not the explosive chunk plays, but plays that were going to extend drives. And I guess at the end there, that drop by Valdez-Scantling would have been, the go-ahead score that would have been, I guess, the one big play. But there were opportunities there. But when I look at it, there's Valdez-Scantling. Slay got the DPI on him. That pass was just a deep shot that he had no shot on. The Justin Watson one, he beat Bradbury, but he didn't even know how to locate the football on that particular play. But, you talk about the drops from Travis Kelce, the Kadarius Toney, I think, had a drop. It's just the Eagles got lucky in a lot of regards, but they had a lot of guys in position to make plays, and you still have to give credit where credit is due. They got the defense off the field, and they returned the ball to the offense more often than not. And I thought they really stepped up when they really needed them the most. The offense wasn't getting it done early.
I saw a lot of last night. I had text chains. A lot of people hit me up on the text. And I don't like to text in mid-game and give thoughts because many times you end up looking ridiculous. But I had so many people texting me, and I saw a lot on social media, that they thought the Eagles were getting out-coached throughout that game. Did you sense that? Did you feel that same way as you were watching that game last night?
And what was their reasoning for that? Because I didn't get that strong sense. Maybe Brian Johnson to a degree, but early in the game, I thought that he called it the way that I sort of anticipated him calling it, given the weather and the personnel. But I think maybe Brian, you can make a case for Brian Johnson getting out coached a little bit there. But other than that, there was nothing that really jumped out immediately to me that I thought that they were overmatched in that regard.
Yeah, and I wonder if it is. I don't know, looking at the offense and the way it was just didn't have any fluidity. Yeah, I got text messages. We're getting out coached. What the heck? Somebody else, 100%. Yep, offensive line not playing well. I thought that was a good point, that the offensive line had an interesting night. I thought Kansas City disguised a lot, looked like they were sending, didn't send. But I thought the line in general, had some issues that forced Hurts. I mean, he took a couple sacks. So I thought the line played a factor into why the offense didn't have the fluidity.
Oh, big time. It's very rare that you see the Eagles get manhandled on both sides of the ball, and that's really what happened. Jalen Hurts took 5 sacks at the half, and to the Eagles' offensive line's credit, they didn't surrender another one in the second half. But, I mean, they were getting manhandled up front, and that's really uncharacteristic to see of a Jeff Stoughton coach team, especially when you have as many high-caliber players on that line. Defensive line, I mean, Kansas City, you and I talked earlier about getting away from the run. Isaiah Pacheco was running the ball with a high level of efficiency, and I don't know why they got away from it, but I mean, that's sort of troubling because that's the Eagles' hallmark. That's what they invest in, and that's what they pride themselves on. And I thought that was an area of opportunity. I thought that the Kansas City had some success exploiting them yesterday.
Andrew DiCecco, 10 games in, Eagles 9-1. I don't know. I feel like we know who the Eagles are, but do you have a sense of what this Eagles team is? Because Jalen Hurts said afterwards, hey, we're 9-1, and we really haven't played our best ball yet. Where do they still need to kind of improve? And it's scary to think a team 9-1, you just went to Arrowhead and beat the defending Super Bowl champions, and yet we feel like this team has room to improve. Where is it?
Yeah, I feel like every week we're saying that the Eagles are still leaving meat on the bone and they have yet to hit their stride.
It's not just us, though. It's not just us, Andrew. Hurts admitted it last night. We're not playing our best ball.
I know, but we're at week 11 now, so it's kind of just like, is this what they are? Like, at what point do you say, okay, let's wake up. We're going to turn the corner. This is where the Philadelphia Eagles. This is the level of our capability. I don't know if it's a coordinator thing, if it's an execution thing, but I mean the team that they have a healthy offensive line, they have a healthy defensive line, they have a quarterback who is obviously working through something, but you still have your playmakers. Like, all the pieces are in place. So at what point do you say, okay, we got to stop leaving meat on the bone. We got to stop saying that, and we have to be the team that we were last year. We were steamrolling the opponents, but I think that they do have another level in which they can tap into. I just don't know when that's going to happen, right? I mean, you would expect it to be certainly, I thought it was going to be coming out of the bye, and we just haven't really seen anything.
No. Did you get a sense of Hurts' health after watching him last night? Did you feel like, okay, that knee's a problem still, or okay, he's coming out of this, and he might be more of a factor in the run game? I mean, last night he did carry 12 times for 29 yards. Obviously not great, but he did have the 2 touchdowns. He had that 10-yard run. Any better sense of how Hurts might be feeling?
Yeah, I kind of got the sense that he's still working through something, and that's going to be something that lingers throughout the season. I imagine 1 week off isn't going to eliminate that and heal it magically. But I think that he's someone that has proven to be tough and do whatever it takes to win, whether that's carrying the ball 10, 12 times like he did last night, or playing from the pocket. And he puts winning before everything. And that's kind of, I would anticipate him dealing with this throughout the season, but I don't know that's going to hamper his play. He may feel a pain now, this morning. He may have felt it after the game, but he's still someone that's going to put the team on his back and do what it takes to win, because he's the quintessential leader, and that's why they follow him.
They only had 1 sack last night. It was early in the game, Hassan Reddick, but they had 9 quarterback hits last night. A little different from the Super Bowl. They didn't get that sack in the Super Bowl. They didn't get much pressure in the Super Bowl. What role did the Eagles front have in the game last night?
I thought that Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick late in the game, they played, Reddick played 86% of the snaps, and I think Sweat played 85. So they're logging a ton of mileage, but I thought late in the game they really seemed to have fresh legs, because they were providing a lot of pressure on Patrick Mahomes, and you saw the intentional grounding late in the game, Josh Sweat with the effort play there. I thought that it was a culmination of things throughout the game. Put a hit on him, pressure him, force him to go to his outlet and just be indecisive. And I thought that was sort of a culmination of it, where it sort of adds up throughout the game. And you see that it may not show up in the terms of sack total, but as pressures and let's face it, Patrick Mahomes looked flustered last night in the second half of that game, and that's a byproduct of what the Eagles, the tidal wave of pass rushers that they throw at the opposition.
I'll tell you what, I also thought they used I liked the game that Swift had, 12 carries, didn't overdo it there, 76 yards, so he had some. But I like the way they used him in the pass game, too. Those middle screens, he had obviously the big play, but he had a couple, the screen pass twice they used to him, I thought was a play that we haven't seen enough of this year. Maybe that's something that's evolving. But, man, 9-1, Buffalo on the way. The last thing I guess I want to get into with you is you win this game here. You got Buffalo, San Francisco, Dallas, and Seattle. You got these 4 games. This, to me, answers a lot, because you can win ugly, Andrew, and it's like, okay, you found a way to beat New England. You found a way to beat Tampa, the Rams. They're not playoff teams. But if you're not playing your best football, and yet you still find a way to beat this group of teams, that to me is the biggest question. Can I find ways to win against good teams, playoff teams? It's different if I'm beating teams that are not playoff level teams. But I think this style of play over these next 4 games, I think will tell us a lot about whether this team is ready to hoist that trophy, that Lombardi trophy.
Yeah, and that's what great teams do. I mean, look at like the New England Patriots during their heyday with Tom Brady. They weren't blowing teams out all the time. They found different ways to win tight games. Pittsburgh Steelers. Look at all these successful franchises and successful teams that were able to sustain it for a considerable period of time. And it's not always going to be pretty, but sometimes you have to know what it's like to have your backs against the wall and pull out snatch victory away from the jaws of defeat, to know what it takes. And I think when you get deeper into the season, particularly as you venture into the postseason, these games and these experiences tend to add up and they stack up. And that's what separates the Eagles maybe from someone else. They're battle tested.
Andrew DiCecco, everybody. Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. And, of course, a great win last night for the Birds. They beat the Chiefs, and now they're on to Buffalo, and they'll play the Buffalo Bills here in Philadelphia. That's a 4:25 game. You can hear it on 97.3 ESPN. Andrew, I always love the conversations and the breakdowns. It's good to talk to you on a day after the Eagles game. Great perspective, as always, my brother. Hey, happy Thanksgiving. I always appreciate you being a part of the show, and I look forward to talking to you after the holiday.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate you too. Happy Thanksgiving to you and all your listeners.